is usually called the x-axis, as you can see, and here's my horizontal line. And notice it has arrows at both ends. And the vertical line is known as our y-axis. And again, notice that it has arrows at both ends. This should be something that you've seen in the past, and you also know that where they intersect is known as the origin. Now, part of your homework is they are going to ask you to talk about the 4 regions called quadrants. Now, we use Roman numerals. And we start up here in the upper right quadrant. This is Roman numeral 1. Then we go counterclockwise. Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, Roman numeral 4. And you're going to notice that if we look in this 4th quadrant, it's telling you that our x values are positive, but our y values are negative. And hopefully you are pretty well aware of that. Now, every point on this Cartesian plane is going to be described by an ordered pair. Now, that means that we have 2 numbers. The first one is always going to be the x, which means the x quadrant is the movement from the origin along the horizontal axis. But the y coordinate is the movement that goes in a positive direction or a negative direction vertically. That is our coordinates. But here's the other thing. The x goes right or left, and the y goes up or down. Now, when we look at this ordered pair, notice there's a parentheses around 2. I follow it by a comma, and I have 3. The 2, since it's positive, is our right number, because on the x-axis we have right being positive. Now, when I go right 2, I then am going to look at the second number, which is the y number. Now, it's positive, which means I'm going to go up 3. Now, sometimes we need to understand that an ordered pair is written as x, y. X comes first, y comes second. Now, sometimes they're going to ask you, tell me the x, and I've given you the y. Well, we're going to be working on that. And also, it is always understood that when we have an ordered pair, this is our right-left number. This is our up-down number. It's just the way it goes. Now, this slide is here to give you some instruction. Basically, we always start from where they cross at the origin. And then we move horizontally. That's the first thing we do. We don't go up and down. We go horizontally. Now, if it's positive, we go right. If it's negative, we go left. Now, once we've made that movement of right to left, from where we stopped horizontally, the second number is going to be our up-down number. If we have a positive number, we're going to go up. If we have a negative number, we go down. And then we put a little dot at that location, just as this diagram shows you. We have -3, +4. Well, if we start right here at the origin, notice the 3 is negative, so we are going left. And then when we look at this 4, we're going up. And then we put a little dot. Now remember, you are also going to be asked to select what quadrant this point is in. Well, remember, our quadrants are labeled quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And where we have this point is in quadrant 2. And notice we use the Roman numeral 2, not the numeric number 2. Okay. Now, when we get here, okay, this slide is basically giving you some instruction. You start at the origin, and then you determine the path to get from the origin to the point that we want to plot. Okay. Now, we're going to do a couple of examples here. And just to make sure, this is asking you to tell me the ordered pair and the quadrant or axes where these points are located. Well, first off, here is our A point right here. Now, to determine its location, okay, I know that I've got to have an ordered pair. I know I have to start at the origin. Well, how do I get there? Well, remember, I have to go horizontally first. Well, I am going a -5 first. And then I am going up 2. And just like my example, this ordered pair is in quadrant 2. Now, B and C have posed a problem. But if you remember, and this is probably the easiest, okay, horizontally, means I go right or left. Vertically means I go up or down. Okay. And the key is from, okay, from the origin. Okay. These are based on going from the origin. Well, let's look at B. Okay. Now, I'm going to put this dot, which is kind of green, at the origin. Now, I know that I have got to write an ordered pair. Well, think about it. From this green dot, do I go right or left? No. So therefore my x value is 0. I am not going right or left. That's my right-left number. From that green dot, which is the origin, I'm staying at that origin. But in order to go to B, I've got to go down 4. And this is on the y-axis. It's sitting right on the up-down line. But take a look at C, which is way over here. From this green dot, now notice C, I am going right 5. But once I go right 5, am I going up and down? No, I'm staying on the x-axis, which means 5, 0. And this is my point. Now, B and C are done for you in this video because people do have trouble finding what those locations are. But the key is right here. From the green center or the origin, am I going right or left? And I do right or left first. In the case of B, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right at the origin. But then I go down. When I go to C, I go right first. But then I don't go up or down. Some people find this very helpful about thinking about how an ordered pair is created. Horizontally, I always go first. Then I go vertically. Now, what I've done is I have given you an example of making a line graph. So these next couple of slides, you are going to see what we do and what you are going to need to know when you do your project. Now, first off, this is saying, let's make a line graph. Okay. Now, a line graph connects the dots. Now, a scatter plot does not connect the dots. And both of these you are going to need to know, because when you look at Pearson and your project in the future, there's a difference. A line graph connects the dots, but a scatter plot, if you see those two words, you're still plotting points, but you are not connecting the dots. And that is where some of the problem comes in. It's vocabulary. And remember, we spoke about this. Vocabulary. Scatter plot does not connect the dots. Now, if you look at this table, I have 2 columns. Now, just like anything in English, we read from right to left, which means that this first column is going to be our X numbers. The second column is our Y values. So even though it's written in a chart, I want to consider an ordered pair of 1, 4. That's what this table on the first row is telling me. When I go to graph it, on the Cartesian plane, I am going right and then up. Same thing with, if I go scroll down a little further, I have 12 to 120. These are ordered pairs that represent what's in the table. And it's because the first column is our X number, our second column is our Y number. Now, we then tell you a little bit more. Now, again, these are vocabulary words. The horizontal axis in Pearson is sometimes known as the input, or as I told you, it's the X column. The vertical column is known as our output, and our output is the Y. Now, this is something you may want to take note of, because when you graph, you are going to have to make some decisions on how to create this graph. Tick marks are placed on the horizontal axis, and notice, what am I telling you to place them between? I'm telling you to place them between 0 and 30. Well, look at all of these numbers. They go between 0 and 30. And I'm going to set them up on my graph for a period of every 5 days. Now, even though my first column doesn't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 30, by setting my increments up in 5, I'm in good shape because I can evenly divide my horizontal axis. Now, the vertical is a little different. Now, if you look at this vertical axis, that's this one. Now, notice these numbers. These numbers are a heck of a lot bigger than the first column, but they go from 0, and I'm going to go something bigger. My highest number is 125, but I'm going to 140. The reason is I am going to break my tick marks to represent every 20 students. So this is a setup. So as we get closer to the project, if you have questions about how to set up your graphs, I can help you set them up, but I cannot always give you a great detail about what to do to set it up. But this is how we decide. And if you look, I now have my graph. Notice that on the horizontal axis, this is 0, where I'm putting the, let's see if I'm going to make this a little better here. This is 0. Notice I'm going up to 30, and every one of these intervals are in 5s, just like I said. Now, when I look at the vertical axis, I'm still starting at 0, but I've gone up to 140. Everything is 20 increments apart. And then I plot my points. And notice I also connect them. Now, a couple of things you're going to need to know. First off, you are going to need to label axes. Well, if you have a table, look at the first column. The table says number of days since outbreak. That's the title for the horizontal axis. If I look at the table, number of 6 students is the second column title. Now, this is one that I have to create myself. What is that table talking about? Well, it's talking about a flu outbreak. I have to give it a title. So, in this case, this is the overall title of my axis. This is my X column title from my table. This is my Y column title from the table. Okay. So you have the information. It's just how are you going to set the numbers up? Now notice I went from 0 to 5 to 10. They are in fives, and I have to make sure that I go 5, 10, 15, 20. On the horizontal axis, I can't do 1, 2, 3, 7, 10, 12. I have to have equal increments. Same thing happens on the vertical axis. My highest number was 125, but I want to go higher than 125. Now, if I used 130, it would be very hard to equally break up numbers between 0 and 130. But when I go an even number, 140, it's easy to break them up in 20s. This is a decision you're going to have to come up with. Now, a couple of other things you need to know. There are little details about a line graph. Now, if we have a story problem that talks about mortgage rates, well, we want to cover a period of time. Well, if you notice down here, I have this circle. Along the horizontal axis, I have specific dates in time. But what I'm doing is, by putting this jagged start, I am saying that this point is my 0, 0, but by putting that jagged mark, and I'm going to kind of show you what I mean, this is 0, 0, and right up here is 4.6. That's my starting mark. I am actually saving paper because I'm cutting out this area. I'm shrinking my graph. Instead of having all that red area on my graph, I just bring it down so I don't have that much red area down here. Okay. So jagged comes in when I want to display something. And if you notice, mortgage rates go up very slowly. They go up by 1/10 of a point. Well, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. Notice I'm going up by ones, and I'm basically eliminating 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, because my mortgage rates already have a bottom, 4.6. So be aware that jagged is going to come into play. Also, they are going to ask you questions about a line graph. Now, these should be something from your past. You should be able to read this particular graph, but there's a little piece that I've got to talk about. You are going to be asked to give an impression. Now, Pearson is going to give you several different reasons to describe the impression of this current graph. and it's going to talk about a trend. Now, I'm going to give you a statement that you are going to be looking at. And these are little details when you're asked to give an impression about the trends. Now, there's certain math words that you are going to know, and you are relating this impression to, in this particular case, the scenario of mortgage rates. Now, I'm going to give you a sentence, and then I'm going to explain why this sentence is the most correct impression of the trends. Notice what I said? The statement I'm going to give you is going to be the most correct statement about the trends of mortgage rates in this graph. My statement said the mortgage rates decrease during April and May, but start to rise or increase at the beginning of June. Okay, now, impression. I'm trying to describe what that orange connect the dot line means. Well, first off, mortgage rates. And I could kind of get that from the title of this graph right here. Now, I'm starting in April. That's what this is. Well, notice that it says the mortgage rates decrease during April. Well, during the month of April is this period. Look at my connected dots. The mortgage rates are decreasing. Okay? Through the month of April. Now, I didn't say April 1st to somewhere between April 1st and April 16th. They went up and then they went down. I'm giving a statement about trends. In this yellow period on my graph, the mortgage rates decrease during April. Now, and May, okay, and notice they're still continuing to decrease. This is May, but start to rise or increase at the beginning of June. Now, I don't have a specific date. I just say around the beginning of June. Now, notice certain words. I talk about mortgage rates because I'm talking about trends. I need to give the impression about the current trends. I need to then use words like increase, decrease, rise, and then I've got to kind of talk about the timeline. I have April, May, and June. Notice I have the words April, May, and June in my explanation. And these are my words: increase, decrease. This is the most correct statement that you can find in your choices through Pearson. So read the choices very carefully when you make a decision about a graph's trend. Okay. Now, not only are you going to get one graph, they are going to have you compare graphs. Well, this one we just talked about. Okay. Now, this is where you have to compare and contrast graphs. Now, I want you to notice something. When you look and give your impressions and you talk about how it differs, you want to specifically focus on two things right here. Are those the same? Yes. But if you look over here, are they the same? No. Does that make a difference? Yes. Okay, so those are the first two things you have to look at. You've got to look at the X and the Y-axis labels. And you have to look at increments. If you look at this particular graph, notice over here, are those intervals between 0 and 6.0 equally divided? Well, 0.1 to 2.0, that's a big difference. But after I get to 2.0, everything stays the same. Okay. Now, what impression does your new graph, the graph in blue, give you about the trend in mortgage rates? Does it differ from the impression given by the original graph that we just saw? Well, this is considered the most correct impression. Okay, it says the new vertical scale gives the appearance of changing less over April and May because the vertical changes are diminished with the closer, or the, I should say, broader vertical scale. Okay. Now, notice all of our interest rates in blue kind of sit around 5.0. That 5.0 line, I've got some above, some below. Whereas the orange graph, it shows movement. Now, for those of you going in advertisement or marketing, these are two ways that you can market or advertise. The one on the left is showing people, because if you look at a picture, people say, oh, it's going down. But if you gave them the blue one, they're going to say nothing's changing. By taking 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, 6.0, I made the vertical changes broader so that my dots were closer together. So these are little details you're going to have to watch for. The graph on the left, if you want to advertise mortgage rates going and fluctuating, that's a good way to go. But if you look at the graph in blue on our right, they're kind of staying steady. So the question is, when you read the newspaper and they give you the blue graphs, they're saying they're staying flexed, they're staying the same or very close, you're going to believe them. But if you then regraph with the one on the left, you're going to show that there was a trend. It went down and then started to rise. It makes a difference how you display a picture, especially with a graph. One is going to push your point, such as the left. Trends went down and they're starting to go up. In the blue, you're just saying they're staying steady. If you're a marketing person or an advertising person and you're trying to get people to buy into mortgage rates, you're going to probably give them the graph on the left versus saying they're remaining steady. Why would people want to refinance their mortgage if they're staying steady? This is something to consider. Now, this is going to ask you to read again the graph. Now, this is where I need to kind of talk to you about, because sometimes in reading a graph, you are getting an impression. The answers within Pearson, when you make a choice, it's got to be the best choice you can make. And notice I said the best. Now, this is a graph that they're going to give you. It said the line graph at the left shows the predicted sales in millions of dollars for several years for a company. Now, they want you to predict the sales in 1999. Well, this is kind of nice because I can look at 1999 and hopefully you know it's right here. And this is the point I'm looking at. Now notice it's right at a line. So I can make a better guess and I can say that this is $19 million because this point right here is right on a line. But to give you a little heads up, let's say you want to choose this one. Let's say in 1996, you want to know what that green area is. Make your best choice based upon what Pearson has. In 1996, the predicted sales were about, now I'm going to say 18.7 million. Now, that's my prediction where the green line is. 18.7. Well, Pearson could tell you it's 18.8. You have to decide. This is one that you're making your best choice. You pick a place that you think that green little line that I drew right here is saying. I'm predicting it's about. Well, Pearson can say it's 18.72 million. Well, that's close to what you guessed. Make your best guess because reading a graph is not as easy as you may think if it doesn't fall very nicely, like the question said. That red dot is exactly on 19. I know that that's 19. But the green, not so good. Okay. Now, last thing we're going to do in section 1.3 is to make a line graph. Now, it says determine the variables that will be graphed, okay, and the values to be graphed for each variable. Okay. Now draw and label the axes. Use the values to draw and label tick marks. Now this is most important to you, using consistent increments. And then plot, and they're asking you to connect them. And don't forget, give your graph a title. Now, here we go. This is saying make a line graph. Now, Pearson is going to give you some graphs. Now, there's a couple of things I need to have you watch, because in order to select the correct graph, you are going to have to make sure that you look at the labels correctly. Now, this is a horizontal bar graph. The first row, notice, is X. So that means when I graph this, okay, it is going to be what we call a quadrant 1 graph. Okay. This point, remember, is 0, 0. Now, notice what's in this column. This is known as the year. Okay? Now, the Y is this side, which is the sales. Okay. This first column is telling me what those labels are going to be. Okay. Now, the title, sales of a company. Okay. Now, first off, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. These are in order, but there is going to be a break here because 0 to 1982 is a big break. There's 82 years in there. So this will be 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87. Okay. Now, the Y is a little bit harder. Now, first off, go to the smallest number that's in the Y row. That's right here. Okay. Now, notice that that row or that number is 2746. Okay. Now, the goal with this is to have equal increments between that 1247 and the highest number that we have, which is right here. Well, notice what I'm going to do. This is called the rules of hundreds because I have a 4-digit number. I am going to set myself up. Now, remember, I'm going to have to put a break here because this corner is saying I'm starting in year 0. My sales have 0. Well, that's not the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 2600 here. I'm going below. I am going to go from 2600 to 3600. Now notice how I picked those. Between 36 and 2600, I have 1,000. That means I can evenly space these out. That means way up here, this is going to be 3,600. Now, you can set it up as 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. You can make 10 little increments. You can also set these up in 500s, okay? You have to decide, well, I'm going to go 26. I'm going to say that this is 28. This is 3,000. This is 3,200. This is 3,400. Notice I've set them up by 200s. Could I have done them by 100s? Yes. Could I have done them by 500s? Yes. You need to make the choice that's best for you. And normally 100s or 200s is the best way to go. Now, with that said, in 1982, I have, in this case, and let's see, I'm going to put a blue dot here. This is saying 3321. Well, that means it's going to be somewhere right about there. It's below 34. Now, I then have 83. It's a little bit higher, not by much. So I'm going to put that right there. Now, 3527 is going to be a little bit higher, almost 3,600. Then I have 3296. Now, 3296 is right about, in this case, I'm going 85, and I'm going right here. It's a little bit higher than 32, but not as high as 34. Then I have 2746. Well, 2746 is about right here. And then I have 3109. When I connect these dots, that's what it looks like. And remember, I have breaks. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, because you are going to be reading these, and also you may need to use that graphing tool in Pearson, and I gave you a separate video on how to use that, so hopefully it should work. This is the end of section 1.3. Good luck.